and welcome to Qtr Time podcast. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P.
And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed.
Hello everyone. After a few weeks off, we are back and super excited to be gearing up for a massive summer of netball at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham very soon. To get us in the mood, we are re-releasing some of our favourite conversations from season 1 of the podcast, and this is the first episode of our 3-part Rewind mini-series, which we'll be releasing this week in preparation for the Games. All the episodes are linked to the Commonwealth Games and will be focusing on the top 3 nations, England, New Zealand and Australia. So what's coming up on the show today, Luce?
So today's episode features our conversation from season 1, episode 2 with England Rose Stacey Francis-Bayman. We chat to her about netball in the media and the perception of the sport in general. We also ask her how she thinks the coverage of netball has changed in recent years and what else we can do to further promote the sport.
Amazing. Take a listen. We are really excited today to have the defensive dynamo herself, Stacey Francis, on the show with us. Welcome, Stacey.
Hi, thank you.
So great to have you with us. We wanted to ask you a few questions around netball in the media, particularly from a player perspective. So let's dive right in. According to research from 2020 conducted by Women in Sport, women's sport currently makes up between 4 and 10% of all media coverage in the UK. As women make up half the population, this is obviously a pretty depressing statistic. Have you noticed any difference in the reporting of women's sport during your time as a professional athlete from a young debutante to now? And if so, what are those differences?
Yeah, there has definitely been a significant difference. I think in netball especially, the profile has grown exponentially since I've been playing, and especially since I've left the country and I've been playing in Suncorp. I think one of the major things that helps that is success and winning. Unfortunately, you can't get away from having to be a successful team or winning medals before people probably want to pay attention to you. That's the kind of the entry to the door. And then once people realise or that they've been dazzled by that gold medal or that piece of success, they're then able to, to take the sport and the athletes on its other merits, of which there are many. But yeah, I think there's been a significant difference from when I started playing to where I am now. But I think what's good is that there's an appetite, especially from the sports, from athletes, that we need to do more and it should be covered much, much more. And that just because we're getting an increased amount of attention, it doesn't mean that it should stop. It should stop where it is by any means. And yeah, unfortunately, I think there's a bit of history that plays a part in that, in terms of like how long, especially not so much netball, but women's football or women's cricket, how long those teams have been around or how long that they've been professional. Usually a little bit to do with money as well, I would say.
So Women's Sport also release some fantastic research into why teenage girls drop out of sport. So I'm just going to read you a couple of key statistics for a bit of context. So 64% of girls will have quit sports by the age of 16 or 17. And this blows my mind, 80% of girls feel that they don't belong in sport, that the perception is that it's for boys. So do you think that the poor portrayal of women in media that we often see and the lack of female sports coverage that we currently have is linked to teenage girls dropping out of sport?
That's really sad. really sad. Yeah, because I think growing up, like the places where I felt most like myself or most where I belonged and accepted was to do with sport and something that I excelled at. So that is really disappointing. But yeah, when you were talking about it, I think the first thing that popped into my mind was around that notion of role models. And I think the more you see female role models, people that look like you, people that sound like you, people that you have, common ground with or passions with, I think it automatically opens more doors in your mind that you're also capable of achieving what that person is achieving. So yeah, I think media plays a huge role in, keeping young women and girls engaged in sport. And also I think the developing sport to become more of a professional option for people is helpful too, because, you know, women are very ambitious and smart and have our fingers in lots of pies. And I think, you know, we want to do what's best. And I think sometimes sport for women doesn't appear to be, you know, a valid option, or you have to choose. And that's definitely an easy exit for women.
Well, actually, one of my favourite ever quotes is by Marion Wright Endelman. You can't be what you can't see. And I totally agree with you. I think it's of vital importance that young girls growing up see themselves reflected positively in the media to encourage them to pursue their goals. So for you, growing up as a Black woman and a member of the LGBTQ plus community, did you have any particular key role models who inspired you either on your netball journey or in life in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I think without thinking of it, exactly as you've just said, like I was living that quote in terms of the people that I aspired to be like. Firstly, it was my dad, because he was a professional athlete, and you know, that was in my house, and I grew up in and around professional sports, and so it was something that I wanted to emulate. But then I was obsessed with Denise Lewis when I was younger, Kelly Holmes, Serena Williams, and then when I eventually kind of got into the world of netball, it was and still is Jiva Mentor. I'm very uncomfortable about that all the time. But there has some phenomenal like defenders that I've always looked up to, and you know, now I'm fortunate enough to call friends like Sonia McCloma, and yeah, it just seems like a thing that I would and could be capable of doing. It's really cringe and probably a little bit big-headed, but I like vividly remember being at my first international, like watching an international, and it was one of Jiva's first caps, and she was only 16 I think when she debuted, and I was sat with my coach at the time, and she was like, oh look Stacey, like Jiva's only young, she's at school, like she hasn't been playing netball for very long, and this is something that you could do. And I was like, yeah, definitely, like I'm going to do that one day and I'm going to be better. I'm doing it. I'm not better yet, but I'm trying my best.
Is it weird for you to think that, you know, you grew up having Jiva as a role model, for example, that there's young girls growing up now who view you as that exact same role model? Is that a bit weird to process? Is that really surreal for you?
Oh, that's mental. Yeah, I don't think of myself in that same context whatsoever. I think I'm quite, no, it is weird.
So talking a little bit more about netball in the media, netball seems to have a bigger image or perception problem than most other women's sports, probably because it's largely not played by men, in that it's a, quote, slower version of basketball, quote, the least cool sport in history, that's from The Guardian, in 2017, by the way, a schoolgirl sport, or even a glamour sport, thanks to that review that we all saw in The Age in Australia. How can we continue to challenge these perceptions even more so than we currently are?
It is, I've kind of got a bit of a devil's advocate view in my mind, because I think the point of difference of netball is that it is predominantly a women's sport. There are obviously male teams, and the game is growing in that area, which is fantastic. But what makes us stand apart is that it is a women's sport. And I think to a certain extent, you can manipulate that and push that to your advantage. So I think it's very easy then for uneducated minds to then, you know, put titles like, you know, a glamour sport out there, or pay far too much attention to what girls are wearing or what they look like. So that's certainly the negative side, but it's also a fantastic strength of the game that it is a women's sport predominantly. It's usually ran by women. You know, there are women's coaches in incredibly high positions, which you don't get in sports like athletics. I think I was reading an article on Twitter today about about coaches who have gone to the Olympics in the past 20 years, and there have been no females, or I'm not quoting that word for word, but it was something horrendous like that. So yeah, I think there is a bit of a perception issue. However, it doesn't take very much for that perception to be changed as soon as you've sat down and you've watched a game of netball, or you've spoken to one of the athletes who are across the board an incredibly erudite and passionate group of women who want to achieve on-court and off-court.
Absolutely. And we saw the Witness Fearless campaign that I think it was the Vixens put out as a sort of response to that. article that came out, I thought that was just so strong and bold of them. And I do think it is starting to change gradually, but there's still a few people that I think we haven't quite converted them just yet. Do you think that the fact that netball is played in dresses is part of the problem? Do you think if we move towards more like a football style outfit or a leggings and vest combo, that would have any impact?
I did have a really interesting conversation with, I think, the Sunday Times about like netball outfits and about kit as a result of my ambassador role with Flyhawk. And what I do think is important and what could be a good way for netball to go and is potentially a help in terms of retaining women into sport is a bit more variety. Like, I love putting on a netball dress. It's part of, it's what we talk about. It's part of our language and culture. England netball, you strive to play in the red dress. I mean, it can be a red t-shirt and shorts if you like, but that's what I know. But what is important, I think, is that the kit isn't a reason for people not to want to play. So if for religious beliefs or personal comfort or anything really that you're passionate about, you want to wear shorts or leggings or a jumper or a head covering, then I think the sport can do more and can lead in that way to be more inclusive. I don't think you should change the kit purely because of sexist remarks.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And love the Flyhawk kit, by the way. Been wearing all of that stuff. It's
It
awesome.
is incredible, yeah. Very comfy.
Yeah. Do you think that netball players and also coaches are too polite when it comes to critiquing the game? You often hear people say, "Oh, Team X really brought it to us today," when in fact the team talking won by like 20 or 30 goals. We also saw on Monday Kat Ratnapala's interview, a rather bizarre exchange where she seemed to be quite reluctant to say what was really on her mind. Would some of netball's image problems be solved if there was more rawness and honesty in these kind of scenarios? And would this help to quash the idea that netball is a, quote, schoolgirls game?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure that the 2 points are mutually exclusive. I am married to Sarah Bayman, and there is nothing polite or filtered I wouldn't have said about the way in which she critiques the game. Although maybe it is filtered and we should all be thankful that she's not really saying what's on her mind. I do think I'm an incredibly honest person. Our household is very honest. And I think that steps forward in terms of professional sports, we can also be more critical and talk more openly and honestly about our own strengths, because I think we can be quite, I guess, like, it's very easy to be very self-deprecating and to put things down when, like you've said, actually there might have been a phenomenal performance or you just could have outplayed an opposition. That's credit to you. It's not, they did a good job. So yeah, I think that is a space that can be improved upon. I imagine that there are lots of rules and regulations in place as to what the coaches can and cannot say after a game. But yeah, I don't think it could hurt.
I think you and Sarah particularly are very good examples of the kind of people who would say what was on their mind. I remember Joe Harton said something like, "Oh, I don't agree with the super shot. It's a stupid rule." But that was like news. That was like, a newsworthy statement. And it seems to be in other sports, people are so much more forthcoming, and it's just the norm that people and the players particularly have something to say. And I really like what you said about players being self-deprecating. It's so true. Even when a player's one player of the match, they have been selected as the person who has been the most good in the game, and they're still saying, "Oh, it was a really good team effort. Well done, guys." And obviously netball is a team sport, but I think we can have that confidence because we have so many fantastic athletes in the game that they should be able to really stand up and say, "Yeah, I smashed it today, and that was great."
I mean, and it's easier said than done. Like, I don't know, 11 minutes ago in the interview, you asked how I felt about, somebody perceiving me the way I perceived Eva as I grew up in, and then that just makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable. But I also think it's an area of growth to be able to have complete ownership and confidence over your strengths and also your weaknesses too.
Totally agree. Yeah, absolutely.
So If you're a bit of a comments creature like I am, I can't resist going through comments on Sky Sports or BBC Sports and reading all of the sexist and misogynistic comments from men. And I do have to point out, it is always men, but of course, not all men. It's part of the reason that this exists, because netball is kind of pigeonholed as a sport primarily for women, and therefore that it could only be interesting to women. Is the key for greater coverage getting more men on board?
I don't know. I'm conflicted with that as an idea from my experiences in Suncorp, because I know a lot of the rules and regulations that have been tweaked that I do not enjoy to try and make the game seem more appealing to a broader audience. And when you say broader audience, you mean men. And I'm not so sure that that's, I mean, commercially, for money reasons, it's probably the way for them to go, but it doesn't honour the foundations of your sport. And I don't think it does to change the rules and regulations just to suit a certain demographic or to make it seem more appealing. For me, I find that quite conflicting. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to assume that we're referring to the 2-point shot here.
One of the things on my list.
For me, the issue with that, in terms of trying to appeal to a wide audience, is that changed a fundamental of the game. Whereas the rolling subs, that kind of thing, I could get on board with that, because I do think it's ridiculous we have to stop time for an injury, which is not an injury at all. So that I could get on board with. I think that actually improved the flow of the game. But the 2-point shot, in my mind, changed the fundamentals of the game. And I completely disagree with that on a sort of moral level, that we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be changing the game just to get more men on board. And actually, is it more of a marketing thing? Do we actually need to improve the way that we market netball to men without changing the game?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. There's certainly work to be done in terms of visibility. Like, the more the sport is out there, like we alluded to earlier, and the more people are able just to see it for the competitive athletic product that it is, the more eyes I think you will get on it. So like, if it's just there for you to watch, most people will sit down and watch it. I wouldn't have ever thought that I was a fan of rock climbing, but I saw it on TV and I thought, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, these people are absolute freaks, like hanging on a cliff edge by their little fingers. And as a result of that, like, I then, went and searched out rock climbers on Instagram and follow some people, and will now sit and watch it if I see it on TV, which isn't very often. But I think, the more visibility that the sport is able to get, then the more it can be taken on its own fundamental, basis, instead of having to chop and change just to please people and upset the core supporters of the sport.
Touching on the marketing issue that you brought up, Lucy, as well, I think sometimes netball almost markets itself to young girls. I find this with the Suncorp particularly, that a lot of it is targeted to that young girl age range, and I kind of want to be like, oh, it's adults watching this as well. Sometimes all the adverts are quite tailored. And do you find that as well, Stacey?
Yes and no. I completely agree with what you're saying. I think netball certainly has an image, and it is really squeaky clean, which is fantastic. It's a really strong tool that we have at our disposal, but also that there are other sides and facets to netball and netballers and people that consume netball. And I know that what I find from the marketing, especially in Australia and definitely when I was in New Zealand, is that it is much more about look at how powerful, strong, dynamic these athletes are, these women, this sport. But that is a new thing, and it's something that they're a space that they're trying to feel comfortable to sit in. At West Coast Fever, our whole tagline and motto is grit, and that's kind of something that we try and embody from the bottom up, about the hard work and the diligence and the competitiveness that's needed and required. It's not, I think one of the really cheesy lines is, it's not pretty, it's gritty, and that's what's needed to kind of get the job done. But it resonates and people really like it. So I don't think netball should be afraid to step into that grittier side.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that I like what you said about netball being squeaky clean, and that is so true. But does it mean that people don't take it seriously? until this new wave of media and stuff has come in, like, because there's never any scandals about netball, is there? There's like never any, you know, huge gossip or even news about like who's moving to a new team. Everything's kept quite hushed and behind the scenes, so you don't really get to hear about, you know, what actually happened.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a really nice, wholesome element to netball, and we should definitely keep a hold of that. You don't expect to see George Fisher falling out of a nightclub and vomiting on the street in the back of, you know, the Sunday Times, but you can also talk about grievances as well without it damaging the reputation of the sport. Sorry, George Fisher, I don't know why she was the first person to come to mind. Joe Harton actually did, but I was like, we've already spoke about her.
We seem to have a big problem in netball that sometimes, even when there is really good coverage, there are numerous mistakes or inconsistencies with the reporting. For example, a highlights video of Layla Gusketh that was clearly Jodie Gibson, and a Telegraph article which incorrectly stated that Kawanga had signed for Lightning when she's actually playing for Storm, using photographs of players who are no longer playing for a certain team. And these things happen on a really regular basis. Is this something that you see athletes in other codes not really having to contend with so much?
I mean, those examples are just really bad journalism. And I think that often comes from it not being reported enough. Like, I guess reporters aren't familiar with the athletes and with the clubs, and so don't know by nature, and I guess don't do their due diligence to make sure that what they're writing is factual. But I think also, if I'm being brutally honest, quite a few of those scenarios, some of the examples that you've given and the ones that spring instantly to my mind, are around misidentification of people of the same race. And that makes me feel very uncomfortable, and is certainly something that has happened to me before, and I've not spoken out about it in the past, but it's something that, you know, myself, Layla, Jodie, anybody really is, you know, no longer willing to tolerate and accept as a mistake, because it doesn't happen, you know, so often with the two blonde shooters in the circle.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I picked up on. And I did see from memory, there was one thing in SSN, I think it might have been Ash Brazel or Cassidy, who was misnamed, but generally speaking, all of the occurrences that I can think of from my memory have all involved Black players. Looking at the frequency, it's not a coincidence for me, and I find that incredibly upsetting. And actually, do we need to do, like I saw Lady Gusketh calling it out on social media, do we need to do more of that and actually kick up more of a stink and hold these reporters to account better?
I think there's certainly a quiet and private conversation that can and should be had, that you can have on your own behalf with, you know, mislabeled photographs with Getty, or your club can have on your behalf. Like, I don't think the way is always to kind of publicly vilify issues like that, but I do think you should also be comfortable to have that conversation publicly, because it just stays being awkward and something that's accepted if you're not willing to point it out. And it doesn't have to be in a public forum, but you should certainly flag it as an issue.
So before we let you go, we would love to hear your thoughts on the opening weekend of the Super League. Which players stood out for you, and who are you tipping for the top 4 this year?
The opening weekend was incredible. I think, you know, lockdown and the combination of the Super League having all of the games on, you know, some form of Sky Sports platform is just the absolute dream. I would never watch as much netball, but there was no reason not to. And we were also rewarded with some incredible matches as well. I think unless you're, you know, a hardcore fan of one team, one-sided games in the favour of your team aren't actually very interesting. But what was great was the level of competition in some of the matches. And for me, I think, on rather biasly probably, what stuck out in my mind was the new and exciting talent that I spotted at goal attack across several of the teams. Like, it was, and it's probably a little bit of my lack of knowledge of the up and coming players in the system, having been away for the past 4 years. But I was really pleasantly surprised and like excited about the amount of young shooters that got opportunities to step out on court, and the amount of rotation, whether that's forced or not because of the amount of games and the double headers, but the amount of rotation that some of the teams were happy to put out there and give people the chance.
So who are you tipping for your top four?
I think my top four has changed as a result of the weekend. Like, I probably had like a rough idea in my mind as to who I thought it would be. And then now I think there are a few more contenders, which is really exciting. Bath for sure, both pre and post round 1 and 2. I probably wouldn't have put them in at the start of the weekend, but Mavericks by the end of the weekend, I think, and I'm sure that they feel that they have underperformed in seasons gone by. They have always had great players in their team and have just never managed to pull it together. They still have great players. They're missing great players. So yeah, I think hopefully they will continue to go from strength to strength. I don't really want to, but I'll probably throw Wasps in the mix. I think they have an awful lot of belief and confidence from previous seasons and from retention of players. What does that leave us with? One spot. I really want to say Pulse. Like, before the season started, I was incredibly excited about the young talent that they've got in their team. Like, it's so exciting. Like Liv Tasheen at the back, and I'm obsessed with Hallie. I think she's wicked. Like, they just have some really good like players coming through there, and they obviously started and had a really good miniature season last year, and I know that they were like packed full of confidence, and it would be really nice to see them string that together this season and prove that last year wasn't a blip and that they've been able to continue to work on that and build momentum going into this year.
I think I can hear Sarah getting her divorce papers ready for you. I'm surprised you haven't said Thunder. Everyone else that we've spoken to has put Thunder in their top four.
That's what I mean. It's difficult.
It's so hard.
There's probably a 6, I would say.
Yeah,
including
you're right.
Thunder and Lightning.
Yeah, there's no way. I'd 100% want to throw Thunder in there over Wasps, actually. And it's not because I think Thunder has a great team, and actually what they showed this weekend, I think, is that they have great depth and a great bench too, which is incredibly important. So maybe let's kick Wasps out and put Thunder in. Well, it makes no difference to me. I can pick and choose who I like and get to safely get on my plane next week and hear nothing of it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Stacey. It's been really fantastic to chat to you, and safe travels back to Australia, and hopefully chat to you again soon. Yeah,
fingers crossed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this rewind episode of Qtr Time podcast. Stay tuned for the next 2 episodes in this series being released very soon. If this has inspired you to listen back to more of our previous episodes, we have about 50 in total out there from this season and last season. So do take a listen. Some amazing conversations being had.
We'll also be bringing you some really exciting coverage from the Commonwealth Games very soon. So stay tuned on our social media channels for our schedule and all the information you need.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Qtr Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Do get involved in the conversation online by letting us know which players you are most looking forward to seeing at the Commonwealth Games in just a few days' time.
We would also really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review, as it helps other people to find the podcast. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, please let us know, and do spread the word with your netball pals so even more people can get involved. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.